everyone in the state, it seems that the country, a lot of people are talking about Northern Michigan solar panels. Ian Murphy from the Iron Pig Smokehouse, the owner, but you do so much more. And I saw your name come out on this big time, but everyone wants to know what's going on, and I'm going to break it down with you. So this first broke when there was a story that came out that there was 420 acres of forest that might be literally bulldozed into making a solar farm. Is that what first got your attention?
Well, so what really got my attention was the additional 420 acres, and then it also being public land trust land that the DNR decided to offer up in conjunction with a development on the other side of transmission lines, right there, right next to the Gaylord Regional Airport, right here in Gaylord, smack dab in the middle of the state. So, people are wondering, why is a restaurateur even talking about solar panels?
Yeah.
And the crazy part of it is that, I've been people know me and the Iron Pig. If they know me most likely either for a really good brisket or the fact that we kept the restaurant open during the
Yes.
COVID stuff. That was fighting against a government agency, the health department, the liquor license, Department of Agriculture. Coming from that, we've had people reach out to me and to my attorney about various things. The mask mandates for the school kids. 15 lawsuits were spurred out of a meeting that we had here in the restaurant. We also had a case over in Traverse City, free speech, with the Department of Civil Rights is trying to limit somebody's free speech over a Facebook post. This is another one of those things. So some people came to us and said, "Hey, there's a development." This is back during the summer. There's an 1,100-acre solar farm being developed, and I hate that word, solar farm,
Yeah.
being developed right across the street from us, and they're pressuring us into signing these setbacks. What can you
Well,
do? Can you know anybody that can help? And I said, well, actually, I just happen to know a wonderful attorney. So he and I started looking into it a little bit. And this RWE Solar out of Austin, Texas, is bidding on two families' properties right across basically the street, if you will, from this DNR property.
okay.
So we've been having this conversation about zoning and how do we stop this with the Michigan Public Service Commission and all this stuff. And then, boom, here comes this story about the DNR getting involved and selling off public land for solar development. And people were just up in arms, like you said. And
Mhm.
I'm like, listen, I know a little bit about this. And I'm going to tell you, it's not just 420 acres, it's also an additional 1,100 acres.
It,
So all
it
this stuff starts coming around, and we just start hearing that DNR is doing this in more places than just Gaylord.
Is this all predicated by the legislature? They voted to move Michigan, their My Clean, whatever it is, energy plan to go clean by 2030, 2040. Is this the beginning of that or part of that plan?
Yeah, so Whitmer basically came out of the state of the state this what was it, February, whenever that was, with her
Yeah.
My Clean initiative, whatever it is. And I did a podcast about this, months ago, talking about 100% renewable energy. Listen, Michigan
Good luck.
has the we have double the national average for hours of power outages here in Michigan,
One
right?
of the
We're
highest.
at
Yeah.
we're at 17 and a half hours per citizen in Michigan. That includes everybody, right? So we're the highest in the Midwest. Our grid, our grid is woefully underpowered, underfunded. It's not big enough. This EV mandate that's been thrown on us by the federal government as well, that's not helping any of this. And now we're supposed to transition away from compressed natural gas, hydro dams, nuclear, oil and gas to wind and solar. Like it just, I tell everybody, I can't take an adult seriously that actually thinks A, that's a good idea, or B, that it's even plausible. And if you do, then you have to admit that you hate poor people. I'm just going to say it as easy as that. If you
Yeah.
really advocate for switching to 100% renewable, you hate poor people. It's as simple as that.
Are people now? I mean, this is just could be just the beginning, and now people are looking. Oh, where did this come from? And now they're learning. I mean, this made national news, and it was kind of a
Yeah.
joke. You're going to tear down a forest in order for cleaner energy and so forth. So let's go one by one. The Gaylord, the 420 acre, is that the 420 acres? Is that a separate plant or is that part of the bigger?
That would be part of the bigger. So they would have a separate lease for the 420 acres on the DNR land, and then a separate lease at a separate price with the two other families, the Capels and the Eblings, that have the combined 1,100 acres. So
Okay.
now my understanding is RWE has said we're no longer interested in the 420 acres from the DNR. And I would suspect that's because of the public outcry from that. But it's
Yeah.
worth noting, Dave, that the DNR did not back away from the table on that. They still have a public notice out for bidding out that property to any of these other 1,000 solar development companies, like the one in Roscommon County that the DNR is also bidding out. I believe, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it's Circle Pit 7 Solar. I think that's in
Okay.
the Royal Oak area.
Okay.
Um, so this 420 acres in Gaylord is still up for bid for anybody else to come in and put 420 acres of solar arrays and then plug it in. See, the whole thing is there's big transmission lines that can support solar being basically uploaded into it, if you will. That's what makes this area so keen for these
Oh.
solar developers to put right here in the highest elevation point here in northern lower, and smack dab in the middle of our state. So
What did you
one
is this what you posted? Was this it right here on the screen? Is this you found this?
yes. That was sent to me by my attorney. That is the public notice that the DNR is required to put out if they are leasing or selling or anything that has to do with public land trust land.
So they're still all in.
Like I said, they have not backed away from the table on this whatsoever. So Mike Whitcomb, the guy that has come out and said, "Oh yeah, well we plan to use the profits, the revenue from this 420 acres in Gaylord to purchase more land and to put more solar panels on, to buy more land, to put more solar." So yes, this is absolutely coming from the top, and it's not just coming from Governor Whitmer and her whole green energy plan, or whatever you want to call it. That's coming from the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed last year. So there's millions of dollars in subsidies, 5 times the amount of subsidies for solar and wind compared to nuclear, hydro, and all those other alternatives. So
Is
it's
this just
definitely top down.
is this just the beginning? Should people everywhere in the state be looking out for things like this? Because if they want the reality of this to happen, they're going to have to put these things everywhere.
That's right. I mean, I have read estimates up to 210,000 acres, square acres
Wow.
of land that would have to be converted into solar or wind to meet that objective by whenever it is. I forget, 2040, 2050. I say it doesn't
Right.
matter when it is because it's not a logical target. It's not a realistic target by any means,
No.
unless you're willing to have the conversation about nuclear and hydro and compressed natural gas being a part of that equation, which they absolutely should be. And I tell people all the time, Dave, I would, and this is not far from my house. It's just a couple of miles on the other side of I-75 from my restaurants and my house. And my wife says, "Well, why are you so involved in this?" I said, "Honey, imagine if they put this on the 10 acres that we just purchased down the road. Like, I don't want that. That they're toxic. They're mined. The minerals are mined in China. They're made in China.
True.
Like,
True.
there's nothing good about solar or wind. I literally, honey, would have a nuclear power plant in my backyard. That is something our community actually would benefit from. And that's another thing. Us residents right here in Gaylord, we wouldn't benefit from a single megawatt of power that comes into that grid over there. That gets sent out to distribution centers and then redistributed. So we wouldn't even directly benefit from any of that.
The DNR, I was in Lansing yesterday, the first day of session, met with Speaker Matt Hall, and it seemed like to lawmakers, this was a surprise. Is the DNR like many agencies in Washington now? Is there an administrative state running where lawmakers don't even know what the heck's going on?
The answer to that is yes, 100%. That all of these agencies that I've been battling against, they are captured, as we like to say. They have to justify their own existence. Now, does the DNR do some good work out there, some land conservation stuff? Absolutely. I'm not trying to paint a wide brush for across all of this,
Yeah.
But the Department of Natural Resources, in my opinion, and apparently millions of other people's opinions here in Michigan, should not be in the business of selling public land in order to put very inefficient, quote unquote, green energy solar projects on any public land. And I'm advocating that private property owners also don't do that, because you have to take into consideration your neighbors. And that's where these clients of ours have come from, a position of they just moved here 3 years ago. And part of the reason they moved to Northern Michigan from North Carolina is because how gorgeous Gaylord is. And now they've got a solar development being proposed 250 feet from their front door.
Wow. And so this blew up. This, and it hopefully, maybe for those of you like yourself and others, this opened the eyes of people. And maybe now this will lead to, I don't know if you can roll back some of the legislation. It's going to take a new governor, most likely in 2 years. But is this hopefully the awakening, maybe, that, hey, what we need to keep an eye on this, and maybe this can go in 2 years, be part of an election, be part of the cycle of the platform of whoever's running.
Yeah, that's a really good question. People have been asking me that. People have also been asking if I would be interested in running for governor.
Yeah.
What I find concerning, and you said it yourself with Matt Hall, and I like Matt Hall. I'm excited to see what Matt's going to do in the new session. But you said it. Matt seemed to be surprised by this. My own state representative, Ken Borton, he's set to be the finance committee chairman for the DNR. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn when I say this, but he has basically said that he'll yank their funding. So what
Hmm.
I'm mostly concerned about is that our lawmakers aren't even up to speed on this.
Yeah.
What's most important is the local people's voices get heard. And what I mean by saying that is these zoning ordinances in the townships and the counties, these need to be addressed and looked at. If you have a community that doesn't want large scale solar and wind developments, you need to find out what these other communities, like what we're about to do here in Gaylord and Hayes Township, is try and enact some very difficult bars for these developers to reach, like high bonds, very detailed reclamation efforts. A lot of these solar developments we're seeing being sold off in 3 to 5 years because the megawatts are not producing what they promised the townships that they would. So we would require that they hold those leases for 10 years or longer. Just things that would make these developers think twice about coming to Otsego County versus somewhere else that maybe isn't up on these things as we are. But ultimately, I think the goal should be is to have our legislators on the same page as those of us on the ground here in Otsego County, Hayes Township, Roscommon County, Presque Isle County, Montmorency County. I mean, they're happening everywhere, Dave. I mean, the phone is ringing off the hook in our restaurant with people saying they're proposing one of these developments in my county. What can I do? How do I stop it? Where do we go? And this is what I think really came from the whole MLive article and the DNR sort of being outed was people called in mass. They called legislators. They called the DNR, Mike Whitcomb from the DNR, the developer RWE. I put out their phone numbers. They went out and let people know that we don't want these things in our backyard. I advocate for small personal usage. If you want solar panels on your home or your business at a small scale, I'm 100%. Sell it back to the grid. Personal wind turbine generators, heck yeah, I'm all for that. But
Yeah,
at
good point.
scale, these things are just an environmental disaster waiting to happen. And people need to know that. The indoctrination is tough, Dave. It's tough. People think that it's just
Oh,
green and it's safe. And it's, even when
it
people say solar farm.
no, I do it. I do work for the Mackinac Center and do work with them. But when I was in the legacy media, one of our reporters where I used to work did a story that they gave $3 million to some school district in Genesee County about electric buses. In this, the reporter did the story. It's amazing. It's great. And I talked to her and I said, "Do you know there's another side?" And they didn't even know there was another side to the issue. That's how far the indoctrination is,
Yes.
that they don't even know. And I've learned so much being, working with the Mackinac Center about how there is another side to that issue.
Yeah, and I'll tell you really quick on that is there's 3 articles that I push people towards. There's one by EcoWatch that kind of gives the pluses and minuses of photovoltaic cells, solar panels, the chemicals that are in them, where they get bind, this, that, and the other. Another article is by Axios, which they talk about September of 23. The other article from EcoWatch was July of 2022.
Okay.
Axios has one about the power outage situation that I talked about. And then the third article I always point people to is the Mackinac Center has an article from July of 22 also, where they talk about why is nuclear power gets such a bad name. And they
Yeah.
dive into what's called the levelized cost of energy. And they say that this metric is wildly skewed. And when I read that a couple of years ago, I'm like, this makes sense. This
Yeah.
makes total sense. Like, so this is how they've taught all of us to think that nuclear is bad and all hydro is so bad and all these things. But yet here we have chemicals that are mined by children and overseas and all these other things, but they're good. Taking down forests that take in CO2 in order to make green energy is like it's just so it's maddening to me. And I really, really hope that people open their eyes. I hope this really does open their eyes to what's going on. The legislators need to get on board with some of these things and hopefully maybe repeal or create new legislation to stop the Michigan Public Service Commission's power, because that's something you and I haven't even talked about, is the power that they now have. But we almost don't need to, because the power lies with us at the local levels, creating these zoning ordinances and all that other stuff.
And last thing, last question, you just said it a minute ago, but it shows that in mass, if people call, people email, they call, it can make a difference.
Yeah, it was really amazing to watch the turn of events as things kind of happened. And people love to see results, right? They love being a part of something and then to actually be a part of those results. And I think that's part of why the Iron Pig is still a thing today and why we've opened another restaurant, because people got to come in and participate in sort of rebelling against the government, or at least expressing that they weren't going to go along with this. And I think that that's sort of the similar sentiments that a lot of these people felt on social media, not just X, but Facebook as well.
Yeah.
They are just saying, look at what we did. You know, people are trying to give me credit. And I'm like, no, 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 no. This is we the people. Like, this is what happens when we get together and we have a common vision and a common goal, and they listen. Like, it's two parts at least.
I appreciate you taking the time. Once again, I'll be up there, some great barbecue, and yeah, I'll head up there probably in a couple weeks.
You got it, brother. I appreciate you as always. Thanks for getting the word out on this.